Guys, I got a lot of numbers in front of me. My head is hurting. I've been doing this since early this morning, and what was supposed to be a quick and easy hunter build turned into a Titan build, which then turned into one of the nastiest DPS builds in the game, which requires a sword with no ammo. Makes no sense. First up, shout out to Kris. I think he goes by XK on Twitch. His link is in the description below. We got to see this clip yesterday posted on Reddit, and it's essentially him using Quick Fang with no ammo, doing a pretty decent amount of DPS here to Greg. Essentially what he's doing is he's proccing Combination Blow, which is a top tree Arc Strider perk, which states kill an enemy with his melee ability to trigger health regeneration and increase your melee damage temporarily. And that is when it began. The hamster wheels have been turning all day today. Guys, what is so beautiful about what XK just showed us is that melee abilities do happen to proc with swords, but only if your sword doesn't have ammo. You see, guys, I've been down this rabbit hole. I've tried proccing things with swords and melee abilities, but the game still looks at the sword as being a sword when you have ammo. But the moment it runs out of ammo, they treat it as a melee. But whatever perks you have on the sword, that damage transfers into your melee ability. Boys, do you see where I'm coming with this? Okay, first up, let us state what we know before we get into damage numbers. What we know: biotic enhancements buff sword damage with no ammo. Biotic enhancements do not buff sword damage with ammo. Again, that was a previous rabbit hole I went down a few months ago. Super let down that biotic enhancements does not help there. The perk Knockout also buffs sword damage. That is a perk on bottom tree Stryker. Impact also buffs sword damage, or your actual damage, despite it having no ammo. So if you have a sword that has more impact, it's gonna do more damage, despite it not having ammo. Now, Surrounded. Yes, it does, boys. It procs here, giving us very good damage. Surrounded spec, all of those things here will flow into our melee ability, as well as our other abilities, like Assassin's Blade. That will also proc even if you don't have any ammo, giving us even greater damage. Now, let's hit the damage numbers that we hit today. A Stryker Sure Hand without ammo, just your basic melee attack, hits 1,446. A Stryker with Surrounded and Surrounded spec without ammo, the melee hits 1,970. A Stryker with Surrounded and Surrounded spec and Assassin's Blade, lo and behold, my Stryker actually has Assassin's Blade on it as well, hits 2,265. Now, let's move on to the next stage. A Stryker with biotic enhancements without ammo. Our melee is now hitting 4,336. Talk about a hefty increase in damage. Don't worry, guys, it gets nastier. A Stryker with biotic enhancements, Surrounded and Surrounded spec, hits 5,909 damage. Now we're going to get into some perks real quick before we get to our final stage. A Stryker with Defensive Strike, which is a top tree perk found on Sentinel, plus Surrounded and Surrounded spec and biotic enhancements, hits 6,501. A Stryker with biotic enhancements plus Surrounded and Surrounded spec and Knockout hits 7,386 damage. Now you think we're probably done. Oh no, we got more. A Stryker with biotic enhancements plus Surrounded and Surrounded spec, Knockouts, and Assassin's Blade hits 8,494 damage. So far, that is a 587% increase in damage from our original melee without ammo. Now, that's 587%. There was a small impact difference between the Stryker that had Surrounded and my other Stryker. So it's probably only 585%. Just letting you know for those that are trying to put the numbers together if you're going purely off of each one of these buffs. Now put this all in perspective. A Stryker Sure Hand with ammo hits somewhere around 3,180. It's actually probably a little bit more here. Again, there is a slight difference in impact, but it wouldn't break any more than 3,200 here. A Stryker though with Surrounded and Surrounded spec with ammo hits 4,334. Now I just want those numbers to be in your mind as a point of reference, because now we're gonna get crazy. A Stryker Sure Hand inside of a bubble with ammo hits 4,815. A Stryker inside of a bubble with Surrounded and Surrounded spec with ammo hits 6,501. A Stryker inside of a bubble with biotic enhancements plus Surrounded and Surrounded spec without ammo hits 8,864. We have now exceeded the previous highest value we just had. A Stryker inside of a bubble with biotic enhancements, surrounded in surrounded spec, and Assassin's Blade hits 10,193 damage. This is what we live for, boys. It's these numbers right here. So from no ammo and its original damage, we were able to increase our damage 705%. Now from a normal Stryker with ammo, we increased our damage 321%. Probably 320, some small differences in numbers in terms of that impact. Regardless though, that's a hell of a lot of damage. Now I've been trying to figure out a way forever to get biotic enhancements and swords to work together. And I feel like Bungie is just outright trolling me right now, considering that this entire time it could have worked if your sword had no ammo. I would have never thought to test that. Now, is this practical? Are you gonna go up in there and start using your sword without ammo? Well, I don't have a team yet to try this with, because there's a lot of things that you have to have. Number one, you have to have the Stryker Surehand Sword. Number two, you gotta have surrounded and a surrounded spec on it. You gotta have Syntheseps to proc biotic enhancements and be on a bubble. But I do want to see what a team of this could do to a Gambit boss. For the few things that I went up against today, just to see what the damage numbers were looking like, I thought it did really well. It put him down with ease. And on top of that, when you're inside of a bubble, you're pretty much safe from everything. So for anything that requires you to be a solo player, this is perfect. In terms of DPS though, I went back to Greg, and if you noticed when you swing with your sword without ammo, yes, it is slower. So my time to kill value here on Greg, even though my damage per hit is much higher, was 528. With ammo, using only melee attacks, it was 523. And with ammo using the jump melee uppercut combo, my time to kill here was 414. Now it doesn't seem like there's much deviation there in the numbers. Obviously that number would get much bigger and wider when dealing with a boss with a lot more health. But it's not that big of a difference, which is what's so crazy about this. A power weapon with no ammo is able to hang with the best of them by simply proccing all of these various different perks to buff its damage. It makes me wonder how good swords could be if it could proc with things like biotic enhancements, because yeah, we get increased damage when we're inside of a bubble using a sword, but biotic enhancements does not transition into our sword damage themselves, which is super unfortunate. Overall guys, I'll be putting together a video going after some Gambit bosses and probably a couple of forges just to see how good the damage can do when we have a whole fire team here together utilizing all of these different perks and abilities. Well fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.